All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce the fourth of our morning speakers. This will be the fourth and final of our morning speakers. We'll break for lunch after this next presentation by Ruchika Nambiar. Ruchika's presentation, the title's not up yet, but I'll just read it if that's okay. Memes for the Soul, the Internet, and its Phantasmic Global Citizen. And Ruchika's thesis committee includes Ijlan Muzaffar, Abhishek Ganguly, and I guess critic Jinying Li. So Ruchika, please welcome Ruchika.
Thank you everyone for being here today. I promise I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch, but in the interim, I hope to make it interesting with my thesis, Memes for the Soul, the Internet, and its Phantasmic Global Citizen. In 2017, Irish actor Cillian Murphy was asked this question.
Are you aware of the disappointed Cillian Murphy meme on the internet?
The what?
The disappointed Cillian Murphy meme.
What's a meme?
Now that's actually a fairly loaded question. In 1976, evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins coined the term meme to refer to any cultural entity that could be considered, like a gene, a replicator. He saw memes as behaviors, ideas, or trends that spread from person to person through imitation. And he cited everything from catchphrases to fashion trends to pottery techniques and even birds learning how to open milk bottles. Now, the analogy between biological and cultural evolution was not new, but its contraction into the tight conceptual entity of the meme is entirely credited to Dawkins. And this conceptual compactness betrays our desire for an almost surgical precision with which we hope to approach this large and unwieldy thing called culture. But of course, it can't be quite that simple. The meme gene analogy wishes a straightforward parallel between the two more than it actually proves one. Says Edmonds, the intricacy of social phenomena requires a finer tool than just that of discursive analogy. A lot of the trouble with Dawkins's meme theory was due to its bundling with genetics on the one hand and epidemiology on the other. It was preoccupied with analogizing the mechanics of faithful copying and replicators, infection, viruses, brain-to-brain transmission, and then imposing it upon something as indeterminate as culture. But the problem, as many mimeticists have themselves pointed out, is that unlike the gene, the meme itself is curiously absent. Sampson says, the supposed unit of cultural limitation is missing. What spreads cannot be unitized like a gene. So you'll find that I actually don't engage with questions of what the meme is. Rather, I begin my inquiry by slowly dismantling the ontological status of the meme, and then using that to emancipate the internet meme from its conceptual parent. Because while the meme may be too wobbly an entity to study, the internet meme can be studied within much tighter constraints. And what makes it so much more locatable is the tangibility of its form as a media object, its deployment in the specifically performative space of the internet, and therefore its ultimate framing within communicative intent. But that doesn't mean that the internet meme is a stable entity. It is an intensely mutable form that thrives on continuously defying its own category, taking the form of everything from image macros to TikTok videos to reaction GIFs, further mutating into birthday cards or Halloween costumes or fridge magnets. Schiffman has provided by far the most functional definition of the internet meme, stating that it is not one object, but rather a group of objects that reference and have awareness of each other. However, I want to extend her definition a little bit because even this contains some lingering desire to try and capture the objecthood of the meme. The meme, as I see it, is not so much about the objects, but rather the network of ricochets between them, the rat-a-tat. And so I reframe the meme not as an entity, but rather a relation, an interaction, and shift the conversation away from form and onto its social movement. And in doing so, I use language as a way to analogize some of the mechanics of the internet meme. In talking about language, Saussure writes, nowhere do we find the integral object of linguistics. If we study it from several viewpoints, it appears to us as a confused mass of heterogeneous, unrelated things. The invention and evolution of new words never threatens to unravel our basic understanding of language itself. And I argue that this is how we need to conceptualize internet memes too, in order to loosen the ontological knot in which they've been tangled up for so long, and study them through their communicative and performative functions. Particularly, I study internet memes through two lenses: memes that capture our experiential minutiae, hashtag relatable memes, and memes that are framed by humor and absurdity. The meme has an unmatched capacity to compress endless layers of meaning down into a very tiny form, making it something of a communicative mutant. But I argue that the reason we find it so attractive to talk about our experiences like this is because we have begun to conceptualize experience in this intensely differentiated, high-res, zoomed-in manner. And this signals yet another conceptual logic of the cumulative self, where I am understood to be the sum of all of my experiences. And it reveals our desire for a certain datafication of the self. You might remember these Happiness Is cartoons that were all the rage a few years ago. And we can see again our desire to break experience down into the smallest, most indivisible units, hoping that they will be a more truthful representation than the larger narratives that we paint of ourselves or of larger experience categories like happiness or friendship or anxiety, depression. And the meme plays right into this logic. But there's also another conceptual logic I address, which is a networked imagining of experience. This is YouTuber Gabby Cook, who, during the pandemic, faced backlash when she unthinkingly posted a video celebrating her birthday in violation of quarantine. Now, you or I may not have been directly affected by her actions thousands of miles away, but she faced the kind of backlash she did because there's no such thing as an individual, isolated experience anymore. We see ourselves as stakeholders even in experiences that don't directly impact us because we now visualize ourselves as embedded within a larger web of global experience. And I'm arguing that this is a relatively new way of imagining our experience that constantly rubs up against our older, more isolated conceptual models. Says Wendy Chun, imagined networks link the social historical to the psychical. Their resolution figures the relationship between two different scales, the molecular and the molar. And so we find ourselves caught in a conceptual matrix that causes friction between the way we experience our own lives and the way we abstract our role in the world. And this further creates a fractured self, one that has to do what needs doing in the here and now, such as using that non-refundable flight ticket during a pandemic. And the other self that has to show up as an abstract citizen of an abstract world. And because of the meme's ability to honor the nuances and contradictions of our everyday experience, it gives us a tiny sip of relief by reconciling an isolated versus a networked imagining of experience. And it's attractive specifically because of the authorial ambivalence of the meme. You get to displace the bulk of authorial responsibility because you're sharing something that's already out there. You're not taking a stance, you're simply supporting an existing one. And so the meme floats around as a parentless piece of commentary, adopting the illusion of objectivity merely in the absence of a specific subjectivity. The meme is crafted to present a situation in a seemingly as-is state. So it doesn't just tell the truth of who I am, but it pretends to tell the truth of how things are. In 1957, Dutch schoolmaster Kees Boeke published this book that visualized a series of 40 scales going from a sodium atom and into outer space. He said, "We forget how vast are the realities we cannot see, and our attitudes become narrow and provincial." For Boeke, the goal of all education was to prepare students for their bigger and more complex responsibilities as citizens of the world. Today, over half a century later, we can see Boeke's vision unbelievably exemplified in the Year in Search films that Google produces every year.
It takes a few seconds, so I'll switch this one up. And I'll just say, Montaux.
Alex? 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 Hello, you.
This is a miracle rescue. All 13 members of the soccer team are out of the cave.
He turns into a superhero, set on feeding as many homeless people as possible.
This election, we've seen historic voter turnout.
In all Asian casts, there's nothing more empowering.
Go right up and do it.
These films produce a different kind of cosmic snapshot, revealing again the desire to quantify our experiences as discrete units of data which can then be analyzed to detect global trends and annual subsets. The world has always been a mediated entity. We needed travel journals and maps to show us unseen corners of the world. We need museum displays to show us what dinosaurs were like. We need the news to paint us a picture of politics or natural disasters that are unfolding far away. We need rovers to show us the surface of Mars. And it isn't only the factual, but the fictional too, the combined weave of which mediates the world for us across both geography and time. Says Heidegger, world picture does not mean a picture of the world, but the world conceived and grasped as picture. And so the concept of the world has a similar ontological problem. It doesn't actually signify anything. In fact, it is precisely the unknown that is being signified. The key difference is that usually the unknown is characterized by that which we can't see or sense. However, now what is unknown to us can no longer be conflated with the inability to see it because of media. We have the ability to watch that which is outside of our own experience. But what this does is keep blurring the distinction between the real and the mediated, because whether it's a celebrity sex tape or a tsunami relief ad or a cat breeding meme, we have to keep dynamically shifting where we draw the line between entertainment and real life, even though it's all being fed to us in exactly the same form. Memes especially perform this perpetual shape-shifting act. If you look at the Bad Luck Brian meme, if the mediated elements in this meme don't hold any significance to you, then they become weightless and easy to compress. But if you knew the person in the meme, he's suddenly not so easy to compress anymore. And so that line between the real and the mediated is constantly shifting on us, demanding a different assimilation every time. And in exposing the phantasmic quality of the globe, it also reveals how fragile the concept of virality is. What is virality exactly? Is it speed? Is it geographic reach? Is it infectious intensity? Or is it some haphazard combination of all three, the formula to which we've never properly defined? I argue that virality does not signify a quantification at all. Rather, we use it to gesture to a quality of uncontainability, of something that has stumbled past our conceptual grasp. And it exposes how poorly demarcated our notion of the universal is. And we can see this in the case of regional memes. They're not at all universally readable, and yet they may reach numbers in the billions. The geography of the globe does not cleanly map onto the geography of the internet. Says Edward Sapir, the multiplication of far-reaching communication demands to remap the world both sociologically and psychologically. The weakening of the geographical factor must profoundly modify our meaning of social relations. And so the meme performs a curious dual function. It can expose the scale and unknowability of the world by showing us just how many people we don't understand, but it also has the potential to soothe the anxiety that comes with that scale. Because if we find something we resonate with, it shows us thousands of others who are seemingly on the same page. And this is why humor and absurdity play such an important role in internet subcultures. There is easily no greater connection than being in on a joke with someone. And the meme, thanks to its immense compression capacity, is kind of like a joke on steroids. A single meme might contain years' worth of references embedded in it. This meme, for example, is quite easily readable. I mean, if you know how dickish cats can be, and if you know flat earth theories, you can put two and two together. Now, this meme would take me a while to explain to you, but the short version is that it is a reference to an online game called Among Us that blew up in 2020. And if you don't know that piece of the puzzle, this entire meme disintegrates into complete unintelligibility. And so, as meaning continues to layer on itself, it produces increasingly insular subcultures that give us ways to connect despite the globe, despite the crowd. And we can see this especially as the degree of absurdity ramps up. This badger is not new, it's quite old. I put it in there because I have some personal fondness for the badger. My brother and I would often break into the badger dance. And my mother has seen us do it, but she doesn't get it. She just gives us a funny look. But my point is, absurdity isn't a free-for-all. Whether it's the badger, or Charlie the unicorn, or Daniel the cow, thank you, Abby, there are some people who will look at them and think, why does this exist? And there are some people who will look at it and say, I love that this exists. So the more nonsensical it gets, you can see the dynamic between intelligibility and resonance begin to reverse on itself. You're no longer resonating because you get it, you're getting it because you're already in resonance. And so the sheer scale of the internet produces a peculiar tension between exclusivity and mass. The internet today has blurred the distinction between what I know and what we know, giving us on-demand access to absolutely everything it has ever gathered. The internet is an active visualization of the fact that my own experience only cuts a narrow path through the dense forest of all the world's experiences, a forest that I know I will never be able to fully explore, even though I can see it looming over me all the time. It's a bird's eye view image that's constantly running in the background of our imaginations, rendering us primarily as spectators of the world. Says Conyer, flow of information postpones action indefinitely until you are nothing but an ever-sharpening set of refined views on issues. But the attractiveness of the internet is that it doesn't simply offer us a paralytic kind of spectatorship. Rather, it compensates us weakly with a form of activity. Through its mechanisms of liking and sharing and commenting, the internet gives us a way to perform our spectatorship of the world. But the meme is not intimidated by the engorging condition of the mediated world. In fact, it's eager to feast on every new thing that crops up each day. And its capacity for irony and self-referential humor offers attractive ways to negotiate with the powerlessness of spectatorship. You can see this in the first world problem memes, where we have the pleasure of laughing at ourselves without sacrificing awareness of our larger global predicament. To joke about our complicity has the power to briefly extinguish the guilt that would otherwise accompany it. Because if not for that very complicity, the thing to laugh about wouldn't exist. So the meme provides relief without forfeiting our awareness of the world, without paying the usual price of ignorance. In fact, the more the meme can reference, the funnier it gets. Says Sontag, if tragedy is an experience of hyper-involvement, comedy is that of under-involvement, of detachment. But the meme occupies a curious position in this equation because it is able to provide us with extreme intimate resonance and utter cosmic detachment at the same time. So my thesis is really not a study of the meme, but rather an investigation of the various conceptual logics that govern our time, how they become intermeshed through the internet, and how the meme is produced as both a symptom and a salve to that condition. I study the internet meme not as a form of media, but rather as a phenomenon that exposes the fundamentally problematic ways in which we visualize the world and our relationship to it. Finally, I'm in the midst of producing this thesis as a multimedia interactive artist book. And I do that because I'm a communicator above all else. That is my craft. And I believe that the greater harmony you can achieve between content, form, and interaction, the more immersive your persuasion. But the short answer is that it's just fun. So that is forthcoming. I'm very glad to have shared this project with all of you today, and I'm happy to now hear your thoughts and questions. Thank you very much.